Welcome back to my video today. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin after 7 years together. Barry still had a dark heart and often had affairs, but he didn't let David find out. David may have always trusted and loved her, but Barry didn't seem to share the same level of affection and loyalty. One day, David returned home late after a long and tiring day at work. When he entered the house, he immediately felt a strange atmosphere. The light in the living room was still on, and he heard voices talking. As he got closer, David saw that Barry was sitting on the sofa with a strange man. They were talking quietly and laughing, which made David feel uneasy. His heart started racing, and he had this feeling of doubt and discomfort. The other man noticed David and stood up, looking surprised and a little embarrassed. The room fell silent. Barry didn't seem bothered, but she averted her gaze when the other man stood up and walked towards the door. David was still trying to stay calm, but his heart was racing. Everything inside him was in turmoil. The strange man passed by David, and at that moment he turned his head. His voice was cold and challenging. "Hey, loser, I had a very good night with your wife tonight. We'll see each other many times." Those words were like a knife stabbing straight into David's. David's heart stopped beating for a moment. He stood there stunned, his legs feeling heavy as if he couldn't move. The man left, leaving David with 1,000 confused thoughts. David walked into the room, his face filled with anger and pain. His heart felt like it was being squeezed when he faced Barry, the woman he had loved for 7 years. His voice choked as he asked, "Who is he? Barry, why did you betray me?" Barry, still sitting on the sofa, tried to keep her composure, but she was clearly feeling the pressure from David's. She gave him a suspicious look and said, "I swear, David, nothing happened. He's just a colleague." David repeated, "Colleague, I don't know what to believe. I can't believe you. You betrayed me." Barry fell silent, her eyes on the floor, avoiding David's gaze. She had no more excuses, and her silence only confirmed what David feared most. Her betrayal was real. Disappointment. "Why did you do this to me, Barry? We've been through a lot." Barry didn't seem to care. She replied, her tone gentle but also a little reproachful. "Just one night, David. Why are you so nervous?" "What's the big deal? Don't make such a fuss." Those words were like a final blow to David's heart. Barry's calm and casual demeanor made him seem almost unrecognizable to the woman in front of him. He had hoped, even a little, that she would regret her actions and realize her mistake. It was a mistake, but she saw it as something that warranted concern. "You betrayed me and you think it's no big deal. You think this betrayal is normal. If that's the case, then just go with him. I can't accept someone who betrayed me and still thinks it's nothing important." David felt like he had said everything he needed to say. There was nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to hope for. He stood up, looked at Barry one last time, and in his eyes, there was no longer anger, but resignation. "Please support me by liking and subscribing. I love you so much, but you ruined everything. We're over." Barry suddenly realized that things had gone too far, and David was not the type to let things go, as she thought. Her gentleness and calmness at first had now been replaced by panic, as she realized she was about to lose him. "David, I was wrong. I'm sorry," Barry tried to say in vain. Her voice choked, her eyes filled with regret. For the first time, she understood the gravity of what she had done. But it was probably isn't apology enough? "Do you really think things will go back to the way they were just because you said sorry?" "No, Barry. I can't go on living like this." Barry was in tears, unable to say anything more. The apology she had uttered now seemed to vanish into thin air. She wanted to hold on, but at the same time she knew that David had made his decision. David took a step, feeling heavy in his heart, but relief that he could finally say what he knew was the right decision. "We should end this," he said. His voice was no longer trembling but firm and resolute. Barry could see that it wasn't just the apology but the trust that had been lost. Once broken, it was difficult to mend. I'm sorry, David," Barry cried, her voice shaking, almost pleading. "I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Just this once. I promise I'll never do it again. Please don't leave me." David's voice was full of emotion, but there was no weakness in his words. He wanted to erase all the pain she'd caused. It wasn't just the one time she'd betrayed him. It was the way she'd taken it so lightly and treated his feelings like they were for nothing. He sighed, sadness overwhelming him. He'd given her everything, and this was how she'd repay him. He didn't have the strength to continue forgiving. It was over. Barry collapsed, her pleas filling the room. But David knew his decision was right, even though it hurt. He couldn't live in a relationship where trust had been completely broken. It was too much. "Barry, we're done," David said. Barry looked at him, tears still streaming down her cheeks, but David didn't care anymore. He had made up his mind and nothing could change that. He couldn't live with someone who had disregarded his feelings like that. His voice was firm, filled with determination. "I'll give you 10 minutes to pack your things and leave." Barry was stunned by David's firmness. She tried to say something more, to beg for forgiveness, but David's eyes said it all. There was no room for regret or begging. She knew she'd messed up and there was no way to fix it. She felt despair, but she also knew she had no other choice. She slowly stood up and walked into the room, gathering her things. David stood there, his eyes no longer shining with love or trust. "David, I know I was wrong. Please, I'll do whatever it takes. I swear I'll never make this mistake again. I'll change. Please, I need you to give me another chance." But David cut her off, his voice colder. "Barry, we're done." That's what David said, his voice low but full of warning. "I couldn't control myself if you stayed here any longer. I don't know what would happen." Barry paused, stunned by his words. He knew that the love between them was dead. There was no way to save it. Her heart was filled with regret, but it was too late. David had completely lost faith and had nothing more to say to her. Barry walked away, silent. Her shoulders were heavy with sadness and regret. She walked through the door. She knew that the relationship they had built over the years was truly over now. There was only silence and darkness, no matter how strong love is. Once trust is lost, nothing can be saved. Barry walked away with regret, while David was left with a broken heart. She opened the door and walked out, leaving everything behind. She had caused joy and pain, and now she was leaving it all behind. The sky outside might still be peaceful, but inside Barry only felt emptiness and darkness. She walked away feeling like David stood still inside the house, surrounded by silence. The only sounds were the echoes of his thoughts and the pain in his heart. The house that had once been filled with happiness and memories was now empty, as if all the joy they had once felt had disappeared along with Barry. He sat down, feeling the pain seep into every cell. His heart was broken, and now the emptiness inside seemed impossible to fill. What had once been love was now only fragments of betrayed trust.